the fact that you could be wearing your prim and proper secretary outfit and then that night in a batirado and like a bralette, and somehow that exists, in total harmony. I'm Rachel Scott. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm the creative director and founder of Diotima. I always knew I wanted to be a fashion designer, yes. I used to make clothes for my dolls as a kid, and then when I would go to parties, starting at 13, I'd make my outfits every weekend. So yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. I had no choice. I had to sew my outfits. I didn't have like the mall to go to in Kingston, and I wanted to have a fresh fit every weekend, so I made my own looks. I did not come from a family of tailors or seamstresses, but my mother had a boutique in Kingston, so she sold women's clothes. And my father used to be a furniture designer, but it was really just always a desperation, just needing things. And I can't say that the things I made when I was younger were really things I'd be that proud of. They're basically scraps of fabric barely covering any parts of my body. I have wanted to do Diotima since university. I've wanted to be a designer since I was a teenager. And when after I finished studying, I started doing internships and then jobs. And my goal was always to launch something that was tied to home in some way. And I didn't know what it would be, but I realized, like, looking back, that there were things about Diotima that I was already thinking about 17, 18 years ago. So just, for example, doing the crochet in Jamaica, that was super important to me. So I was already researching artisans like 15 years ago. I mean, everything that I do is really rooted in the idea of craft and savoir-faire. So the hand and just like this attention to how things are made, and texture is really the foundation of everything. And then I think I like to think about clothes as like language for how people dress. And so there are moments where you can feel really tailored or buttoned up, and then moments where you're really exposed or very sensual. And it's like the tension between those two things that I find really interesting. My culture, being from Jamaica, really informs so much about what I think about style. I think this idea of this tension is something that really exists in Jamaican style, and maybe just Jamaican culture and Caribbean culture at large. Like the fact that you could be wearing your prim and proper secretary outfit and then that night in a batirado and like a bralette, and somehow that exists, in total harmony, I think is really interesting. And I grew up in the 90s going to dancehall parties, and so like the mesh undershirt and mixed with tailoring, and of course the batirado, and like full color looks and metallic and texture, all of that really still sits with me. But I guess I'd like to think about it without being nostalgic, so I never try to make anything that's exactly that, but I'm always looking futurally and thinking of how that can translate to the global expression of Caribbean style. When I want to feel my most powerful, authentic self, I usually will wear a blazer and a skirt. I'm very inspired by Mrs. Prado. She always wears a skirt. I think I got that from her. Rings. I think rings really finish things. This one's stolen from, this one I borrowed from my mother about 15 years ago. Still on loan. She's never getting it back. I think that Black women, well, just in general, Black people have been overlooked in fashion, but always inspired fashion. And as we know well, I mean, if we want to take, for example, the Met Gala this year, the influence that like Dapper Dan has had on fashion is just immense. But Black women have always been, either like what we see of it is really performative, so like models, and that's it, occasionally when people need it for just optics. But they've always been there in the background. And I think as more of us become really, players in the industry just globally, I think we're very supportive of each other. I think there's more room for more of us. And I think that I wouldn't have a brand if it wasn't for stylists and editors supporting me, Black women in particular. And I probably couldn't have a brand if other Black women designers didn't come before me, like Tracy Reese, for example. So yeah, I think we pave the way for each other, and then we also support each other, which is super important. If I could dress 3 people dead or alive, well, 2 are really easy. I don't know if I can come up with a third, but 2 are really easy. Obviously Grace Jones, like icon. I actually met her over the holidays and I'm still gagged. And Rihanna, no question. Yeah. I'd say Solange, but I have dressed her before, but I mean, any opportunity to dress her again would be a dream. The advice I would give to a young designer would be not to rush into things. I think the industry really puts this idea of youth, just a skewed idea of youth, and that you need to launch a brand right when you get out of school. And I don't think that that's really attainable or accessible for many amazing designers, because we don't have the resources, we don't come from the family money or whatever it is. And I also think there's so much value to working for someone else. I worked for many brands for over 17 years before I launched the brand. So I think like just don't feel the pressure to start, and just do it when you're ready. I'm still finding defining moments of my career. Every year something amazing happens, whether it's awards or like the presentations and what we achieve like collaboratively with the presentation. Each thing that we do is just so special, and it just is continuing to define itself with each thing. Collaboration is super important to my process, and I would say to just the design process in fashion in general. And I think that's not spoken about often enough, but there is no way to build a collection on your own. Like there's no creative genius that's working in isolation. I mean, I don't have a design team, but I work really closely with my stylist. I work really closely with like the artisans in Jamaica who do crochet, and artisans in India who do a lot of the embellishment and embroidery. Work really closely with a footwear designer and a footwear developer. Work closely with the mills. Like every single person in the process adds to like what happens in the end, what happens with the collection. And then also when you get to presenting it, I collaborate with the hairstylist and the makeup artist and the person doing the sound and the person doing the set. So every single step of the way is collaboration, and I think that's what's so beautiful about fashion. I work with artisans in Jamaica to do crochet, and that's the only place I do crochet. And crochet is so interesting because it can only be done by hand. It can't be done by machine. So I work with about, 10 to 15 women. It changes based on the season, and each woman is different. So, they have different interests or they have different skills. Some are like, I work extremely closely with in developing because they're just like incredibly talented artisans, and some I'll work on more simple things. But every person that I work with, and they're all throughout Jamaica, a lot of them are in and around Kingston, which is where my mother is, who's in charge of the crochet team. But then there's some that are farmers that do it in their as their side hustle, nurses, and they are kind of scattered all over the island. And it's really great because I don't think that they ever really considered the value of their work until we started working together, and I think that exchange and that kind of like, that value that's being given to them is really special. I would like to be remembered as the first, or at least the person to have made the first luxury Caribbean fashion brand. And I want it to be a brand and a company that adds to culture. Like, I would love to have a foundation in Kingston. Yeah, and I want there to be longevity. I don't want to be a flash in the pan. Black History Month for me is a good time to just remember what we've done collectively as a community and uplift each other. If I could share a 10 to 1 cocktail with someone, it'd be with my wife. Shade.